Are you off buying gold and Bitcoin and
I think all roads lead to inflation. We're going to end up,
but does all roads lead to inflation, therefore gold is a good investment? Is Bitcoin a good investment to you?
I'm long gold. I'm long Bitcoin. I think commodities are so ridiculously underowned. So I'm long commodities. I think most young people find their inflation hedges via the NASDAQ. That's also been great. It's probably some combination. I probably have some basket of gold, Bitcoin, commodities, and NASDAQ, something like that. And I would own zero fixed income. If I had my cash, it'd be very short term. The playbook to get out of this, you see it in Japan right now. They have 2% inflation, 30 basis points overnight. They don't want to raise rates. The playbook to get out of this is that you inflate your way out and you have a small tax on the consumer and you run interest rates and nominal growth rate, interest rates below inflation and nominal growth above inflation. And that's how you reduce your debt to GDP. So you're going to have the Fed they should be easy. They should be
easy. You want them to cut.
So just real quickly, every 100 basis points, given where our debt to GDP right now, every 100 basis points is worth about $90 billion a year to the deficit. $90 billion. So yes, if we're trying to stabilize debt to GDP, we want to run the most dovish monetary policy that we can without letting inflation become too much of a tax on the citizenry. So yes, all roads lead to inflation. That's historically the way every civilization has gotten out, is they've inflated away their debts.
But let me ask you this, and maybe we can show this chart, because also the only way to solve this is to figure out a way to raise enough money where at least the math starts to make some semblance of sense.
Yeah, but before, let me just quickly show where we are in terms of our tax take relative to the rest of the world. So I think there's a quick chart on that. It shows 5 countries. And it goes from the U.S. at the lowest end, 29.3% of GDP is what our tax take is, to France at the highest end. And you can kind of see there's Canada, Japan, the U.K.
Now, before we get into our own math, let me just ask you a question. One reason why some people would say the U.S. is as successful as it is because it is less of a regulatory state, less of a tax state, and is probably representative of that on the screen. And when you go down that list and say to yourself, how successful is the U.S. relative to how successful is France, do you say to yourself that France is less successful because its tax rate is higher?
I would unequivocally agree with that. It's like everything. There's a fine line. There's a needle that you've got to thread, right? You could also say one of the reasons why the U.S. is so dominant is because we fast-forwarded so much future income by spending so much in a deficit standpoint, right? And it's really occurred, to be frank with you, the guy that started it was Trump, right? He inherited a 3% budget deficit in 2016. In 2019, that was close to 5% pre-COVID, before COVID. And then, of course, Biden gets in and sees what Trump has done and says, here, let me raise you one with the Inflation Reactivation Act. And, here we are today. So can I just say, between Trump and Harris, you've probably got the 2 people least suited for the job that's ahead of them. Least suited for the job that's ahead of them. And that's why it's going to be, again, after the election, it's going to be so important.
Let me ask you.
And I do think they know. I think we're doing also a political kayfabe with them. They know that they're not going to do these spending programs. I think they know that. It can't happen.
Okay, but if both of these folks you think are the wrong people, but it's still a binary choice, what is your choice?
I'm going to keep that private. And the reason I'm going to keep that private is because there's a lot of causes that I'm really invested in. Robinhood's one of them, the environment. And I'm going to end up working with people on both sides. We're a really divided country right now, and I want to make sure I have great relations with whichever administration goes on, because I want to continue serving the millions of people that I do and the billions of critters that I love.
Let's talk about taxes, though.
Okay.
Because that's how the money is going to get raised, one way or the other.
Correct.
I think we have a screen, if we could, that puts up a little bit of a menu here.
Yes.
I don't know if it's options. Actually, they may not be options at all.
There are plenty of options. But
there's not many ways to get where you need to go unless you start to do some of these things.
Correct.
Maybe. So the question is, Of what's on the screen, you can let the tax cuts expire. That gets you
look, can I just say this?
Yep.
You have to let the tax cuts expire.
You have to.
You have to let those expire. That's $390 billion. We're going to have, again, we're gonna be broke really quickly unless we get serious about dealing with our spending issues, and unless we can either. I don't know if we'll be able to cut spending that much. 60% of our spending are transfer payments.
But if you think we're going broke, and you think Trump is going to be the president, he's not going to let those tax cuts expire if he can avoid it.
The thing
he does not want the corporate tax rate to go to 25%, as you're suggesting it'll have to. He's suggesting it should go to 15%.
I'm saying that just to get us to the point where we stabilize debt to GDP at where it is right now, here's what you need to do. You need to let the Trump tax cuts expire. That's $390 billion. You need to raise the payroll tax on every single working person, 1%. That's another big slug. You need to...
What do you think that does to jobs?
We're clearly going to have a period of contraction, which hopefully, that's why I was going to say, it's going to be really important for the Fed to be able to offset the fiscal contraction area that's going to come.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And make sure you're joining the Patrons. If you're not a part of the Patrons, make sure you're hitting the Cash App. And also, guys, make sure you go like and follow the TikTok. More videos to come. And we have Paul to the Jones is long on Bitcoin and gold. Says that the only way is to inflate yourself out of this debt. Is that correct, guys? No, it is not. Nowhere in history have you ever seen a civilization be able to print their money. Not only just print the money, but print 80% of all money in existence in 2 years. Basically destroying the fiat system themselves. That has never been done in history, but we know it's for a reason, and that's to bring in these digital assets, the robots, algorithms, and drones. And Japan will definitely raise rates and lead the machine takeover. Remember, the Japan leaders report to San Francisco to plan out the fourth industrial revolution. And you know, I brought it to you from the horse's mouth. Remember, these billionaires, these fund managers, they're not going to give you the whole truth. But commodity prices are definitely giving you the truth. Now, Paul to the Jones go over the government deficit. It has to be cut. And Trump has no problem with cutting this deficit because he stated that Elon would be the one in charge of it. But all this government spending has to come to an end in order for us to go to this level playing field, because the world reserve currency of the United States is going to end, and we're going to see the rise of the BRICS, which are having a summit right now, led by China with that digital yuan backed by that digital SDR. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. And then also he talks about Trump winning this election. And if we don't get any more entertainment, if no other movies come in, Trump is definitely going to win this election. And it's going to be his job in order to land us in this fourth industrial revolution. And don't forget, when he was president, he signed a lot of executive orders to open the door to where we're at right now. And that's the AI takeover. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. Now, also part of the fourth industrial revolution is the metaverse, where basically you're in a video game and that 3D printed food is right around the corner. Instead of the chef whipping up something, you have the scientist whipping up something. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you, because he knows when it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
We are now 14 days away from the election, and I think everyone is trying to make sense of this market and where things are headed and where things are going, and maybe, depending on who you think is going to win the presidency, how that's going to impact this. So where are we?
Well, for me and in the hedge fund world, this is kind of the macro Super Bowl coming up on November 5th. And I think this one, you know, some elections are not that binary. this one is binary, not so much because of which candidate wins, but it's binary in the sense that what is the market's response going to be to either candidate if they win? And so we can either continue down the path we've been on, which I'm going to kind of frame here in a second, or we may have that point of recognition where all of a sudden the markets have different ideas than what the candidates have been espousing. So
before you lay out where you think that piece of it is, let me just ask you this. So Stan Druckenmiller said that he's convinced by market indicators right now that Trump will win. And I'm curious if you agree with that thesis. Part of it is that he's looking at, Polymarket and the betting markets. Part of it is he's looking at the shares of DGT. Part of it he's looking at Bitcoin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly the markets are saying he's going to win. I think they're heavily skewed by Republicans, so I don't know if I necessarily believe the betting markets, but I don't have any great insights. I really don't. I just would be more skeptical of them than I would normally. It's the same way, look, in football betting, right? You can get a huge home bias where the line doesn't reflect reality. So, yeah, I know what they're saying, and I respect them.
But what about other investors? Dan Loeb recently came out with a report to his investors saying that he's positioning or repositioning his portfolio around the thesis that former President Trump will become the president.
And I have also, if I'm being honest, primarily because I see the polling numbers have clearly moved in this direction.
You say also, meaning you've repositioned as if former President Trump wins.
Yes, I've moved in that direction for sure.
And what does that mean?
It just means more inflation trades, which I'd love to get to, but right. I think it's really important that we frame where we are right now, and where we are is an incredible moment in U.S. history. And what I really want to talk about is the debt trajectory that we're on. So we've gone in the space of 25 short years from debt to GDP at the federal level from about 40% to almost 100%, 60% in 25 years. And if you look at what our trajectory, what CBO projects our trajectory to be, as well as what we see as and we're going to project further than CBO. So I'm going to show you a chart. This is debt to GDP. So CBO says that we go from 98 to 122, I think 124. That's very conservative over the next 10 years. If you extrapolate that 30 years, you get to 200% debt to GDP. And so that's something, obviously something that can't go on forever, won't. And the question is, after this election, will there be some point of recognition, particularly with all the tax cuts that are being promised by both sides and the spending plans? I mean, they're handing out tax cuts like they're Mardi Gras beads, right? We're doing tax cuts on everything from tips to toucans. So it's crazy what's being promised. After the election, I think the fact that you've got 7 to 8% budget deficits as far as the eye can see, the question is, will the markets allow either candidate? I think under Trump, the deficit goes up by $500 billion per year. Under Harris's plan, it goes up by an additional $600 billion plan per year. I have a feeling all those are just pipe dreams. I think the chances of any of those being an
The CDC says it is investigating an E. coli outbreak linked to McDonald's Quarter Pounders, with 49 cases, 10 hospitalizations, and 1 death across 10 states. McDonald's shares falling sharply in after-hours trading.
Going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is, it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of a huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Chinese bank ICBC has been hit by a ransomware attack, and the U.S. Treasury market, as a result of that, has been disrupted. This, according to the Financial Times. We're getting it more right now with Bloomberg's Shonali Bassick. Shonali, what do we know?
Listen, we have the Financial Times now reporting that ICBC, one of China's largest banks here, was hit with a ransomware attack. And remember, they're a very significant intermediary in the Treasury market. The SIFMA has told its members that this has been part of the reason here that the system is kind of clogged up, if you will, during that auction that we saw a little bit before. The attack had prevented ICBC, according to the Financial Times, from settling Treasury trades on behalf of other market participants. A large executive at a major bank also telling the paper that such a large party on the fixed income clearing corp creates major concerns, potentially impacting the liquidity of Treasury markets.
Now, it was not just a poor auction. It was absolutely lousy, and when the dealers have to step in to save a treasury auction, that's a rare occurrence. And
Cryptoteacher and the new World Order book, plus the 3 Kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, new to cryptos, Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance. Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get home stocks, the Seaver, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing, they were still getting that free money. What are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID 33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.